All right, you guys, so glad everyone can make it to Awakening, the master key to all problems. So, first of all, I'm kind of wondering what your guys' experience was this week with the awareness orientation exercise. If anyone got a chance to experiment with that and see what maybe possible new thing that they discerned that maybe wasn't immediately obvious to them before as to who they were, or maybe even any struggles or problems with trying to figure out what the heck this exercise is actually pointing towards. Those are very relevant experiences too that I would love to hear. Any experiences with the awareness exercises this week? Feel free to unmute and say whatever you want. Who do we got here? There we go. Who is that? Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
How's it going, my man?
Good. Yeah, I have experience with that, with the exercise. So as I would remember that, just awareness, I was able to essentially just let go of any situationally charged emotions that I had. Just by drawing back and remembering that, I was able to just basically let go of anything.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a superpower, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Was it like immediate, or did you take some time to like on your own figure out anything about it, or did it kind of just like you were just implementing it as you went throughout your day?
Well, I just would realize that I'm not my body. I'm not my emotions. I'm not these things that may seem like an issue. And in doing so, I'd find peace.
Right. So just like throughout your day and whatever experiences you're having, or was there like a deliberate moment that you
Yeah,
set down?
I tried to do it as often as possible.
Cool.
So that I'm operating from a base point.
Right. Right. That's perfect. Awesome, man. Yeah. And you may have found too that this can go deeper and deeper. It's not even just like, okay, so now I'm not experiencing the pain and confusion from whatever was coming up in the moment, but we also can find that there's a whole level of silence that we can absolutely tune into that recharges us and replenishes us, and the energy just moves through us whenever we tune into that level of experience, when we place our attention there. And so that's a whole kind of different deepening and freedom than the normal, like, stuck in the thoughts that create the emotions and the pain and the confusion of the normal everyday experience. And so this exercise can do what can do that, and also can certainly go miles deeper, infinitely deeper. What about some other people? What did Corbin, KT, Stan, all you guys? Does anyone else have any experiences with this awareness exercise? Stella, Kara, Sarah, Cliff, that they would like to share?
I'll throw in my 2 cents worth for
Cool.
the sake of conversation.
Yeah.
As you know, I try to always be mindful of the observer position, which is really what we're talking about here. Being aware of that duality of the observer position of consciousness and awareness, as well as the material position of consciousness. And I try to be as mindful of that as much as I can. And when I do, it's just like Kevin was saying, it brings a different perspective, a feeling of peace and calmness and serenity, because there's as part of that, there's the realization that this material experience is literally like a stage play or watching a movie.
Right.
You know, and we're part of that stage play for our benefit and our learning. So we can observe that in that context, even with some humor, knowing that there's divine intent as at the foundation of it, and there's, you know, and its reality is so much more than what we are materially experiencing.
Yeah, and this is a perceptual experience that you can actually drop into. Like when you look at your eyes, it looks like, oh, it's almost like the realization of, oh, there is so much more than what's been dancing in front of me. All I've known life to be is what I look out my eyes and see. But because I'm identifying that there's so much more than what meets the eye, then there's like the perceptual experience that Stan is talking about of being the, quote, observer, being the awareness that is simply aware. So hi, Ashley. I'm glad you could join us. Welcome, welcome. I know some people had some work difficulties today. I think Ashley was one of them. Glad you could make it. Just to fill you in, Ashley, we're sharing experiences of the time we'd either spent deliberately doing this exercise or this awareness exercise, or even time that we had just like thought of throughout the day while we were working or walking or doing whatever. Any benefit or anything at all that we noticed, or even any challenges, or even not understanding it. All these are very valid experiences to share.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you loud and clear. Welcome.
I wish I would have heard some other experiences. I know personally, so the awareness practice, I already told Brian this, but it'd be nice to hear if other people experience this. When I was like trying to have the awareness of my body at my desk at work and my thoughts, I told Brian, I was like, my posture has been so good this week because you can't be aware of your body and slouch.
Right.
You sit there and you stand up more like, oh, okay, I'm sitting here, and like it was amazing. Like one of like some weird side effect of becoming awakened is better posture. And so that was just something really small that I took away. But I wish, did anyone else experience that?
That's cool. That's a good example. Yeah, did anyone else experience that? Kara, did you unmute to say something? No. Cool. Well, yeah, I totally know what you mean. I'm sure there's more people here too who know what you mean. I think even a couple of them didn't get a chance to watch last week's video until like yesterday or something, so they haven't had a lot of time to experiment with it like some of us. But yeah, it's like when you take a moment to actually become aware of this body, then all of a sudden you can't help but sit up, and it makes you think. It's like, so what is the opposite of being aware of the body? Is it like complete unawareness, to where we're just like, what are we really doing with our body, to where we're so unaware the rest of the time? But yeah, I think that you can't help but have a more straight posture whenever you attempt to become aware for a moment. So I love that, Ashley.
I don't want to talk like the whole time, but like just every single day asking the universe to bring to you what the greater context is that you need to hear. The universe answers you. I had so many people in my life give me criticism this week, and just out of love and wisdom that they saw. And I'm not gonna lie, I probably had the most anxiety this week because I felt like I had so many shortcomings. But it's because I was asking the universe to open my eyes and tell me what I'm missing. And the universe answered me. And people were like, Ashley, do you know that you do this? And, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, no, I didn't know that's how that made you feel. What can I do? Like, it's anybody who does affirmations and reads the top 10 goals every single day, you know that the universe answers you, and they redirect you. Like, no, that's not really what you want. It's really not what the greater plan is. And it opens your eyes to where you are supposed to be and what you're supposed to learn. So I've honestly had a really tough week. Brian asked if I could share my journal, and I said no, because it's so intimate and heartbreaking to me and embarrassing, to be honest, that I haven't had my eyes open to so many things. But I'm really excited for my journey and my growth and my spiritual growth, because I'm going in the right direction.
That's awesome, Ashley. Great stuff. Can you give us like an example of one of the greater contexts, quote, greater contexts that you discovered this week that maybe you wasn't familiar with before? Because it really can be anything. I gave some examples of what we will be going over in this class, but it can be anything that you're realizing that is a greater context.
Okay. I'll give you one of the like non-embarrassing ones.
Okay. Sounds good.
But I idolize someone in my life, and I basically have a crutch or control in that I think I'm in control, in that I need to take this advice from this person and I need to listen to them, and my eyes have been opened that this person has their own shortcomings and they are not perfect, and I don't need to be holding them up on such a high pedestal and thinking every word that they say is true. And I think I'll just tell you who the person is. It's my dad.
That's awesome. Okay.
I love my dad, and he's extremely intelligent and smart and successful, but I have been blinded by maybe how he treats people. Like, maybe he is smart and successful and a great businessman, but maybe he's not actually the greatest at humanity and loving others and doing what's best for others. And that's something that I want in my life. I want to help others, and I want to be a positive light to other people and not just bettering myself and what will better my life.
How the heck did you wake up to this?
Sorry, what'd you say, Brian?
How did you wake up to this?
It's kind of a funny story.
It's important.
But again, it's just, if you ask the universe to open up your eyes, it's going to open up your eyes. So my dad has rental properties all over the United States. And tax benefits of that is that when you fly anywhere in those places, you write off all of your expenses, your plane, your meals, your hotel, anything like that. So very great way. I don't know who's on this call who has other rental properties. I know I've followed in my dad's footsteps in that. But okay.
Yeah, Corbin does some of that stuff.
Don't
If I'm talking too long, please tell
No,
me.
please. This is important.
Okay, so he has this rental property. The renters call the property management. They say their washer and dryer is not working. They say their microwave doesn't work. And so my father goes, he flies to Florida. So this house is in Florida. And he lives in Missouri. I live in Arkansas. I don't know where everyone else on the call is, but so he flies down there. He gets to the house, and his key doesn't work. The renters have changed the lock, so he's frustrated about that. So he finds a way to open the garage. The renter does know they're coming, but they're at work, and so he gets in the garage. He looks into the washer. There's 9 inches of standing water in it. And he's like, shoot. So right before this, he had flown in. He drove to Sarasota, Florida, and bought a new washer and dryer for this rental property. He's got the washer and dryer in the back of his truck. He's inside the house. He sees the 9 inches of water. He's like, oh, okay, I'll walk in the house. He goes and looks at the microwave. Microwave's unplugged. So he plugs in the microwave, turns right on. He puts a bowl of water in there, and microwaves, warms up, seems to work. So he sets the clock. He's like, okay, one of 2 things done. Second thing, so then he's checking out the breaker box. The breaker actually broke for the washer and dryer. It had blown. And so he goes to Lowe's, gets pieces, fixes the breaker box. Washer and dryer works just fine. He had just bought this other washer and dryer on Facebook Marketplace. He's super frustrated, very angry, which I think anger is something that all of us need to reflect on. Like, where is this anger and control coming from? But so he calls the property management company, and he tells them, you call the renter, and you tell them, I am very, very, very upset, and I'm going to kick them out. And what that does is he leaves, and they come home. He meets them at the front door, and they're super nice to him. They're very, very nice. They don't want to get kicked out of their home. These are Haitians living in Florida. And the language is, there is a language barrier. It's very thick accent, and they're trying to communicate. And I was just reflecting on that my dad would call and cause pain to the renters, just to make them like, I don't even know what to make them what. I don't know. And things have happened like that before, and I just kind of brush them off, or I think it's kind of funny, or whatever. But no, that's not nice. We're all humans, no matter where we come from or what station of life we are in, and we just need to love each other and be there for each other and support each other. And what if he used that as an educational opportunity to show them, like, hey, this is what actually happened, instead of like putting fear in them so they would be nice to him. And it's kind of a weird story.
No,
but,
that's really good. My favorite part about it, Ashley, is that because of this very unique set of circumstances, you were able to see enough to, quote, knock him off the pedestal. And now, and what the opportunity that provides you for is more of a reasoning for yourself any thoughts that he may have told you in the past that are still operating in your own mind as your own. And so it's like now there's like the reevaluating, reconsidering all these thoughts in a different light. And that's what the whole lesson was about, Ashley, is learning to reason out what might be no longer reasonable to believe. And so that's absolutely one of those awakening moments.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good story. That was a great example. That was a perfect example. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, that's so fascinating, because I've got one of those people in my life too that I'm actually very recently waking up to. I love them and appreciate them so much, and they've taught me so much and of so much value, and I could even feel it in my heart when I'm talking about it. And also I'm seeing, like you're seeing it with your dad, is they're also human. And what I was just I was brushing off before and not even seeing, now I'm seeing as, they actually do have reactions too, and they actually are very human. And everything that they tell me, it could be really great and good, but I also need to evaluate it for myself before I move forward in the world with it. That was the huge realization that I had. That sounds very similar to what you said. I also need to, like, they're a wonderful person, but I also need to evaluate for myself what they tell me before I move it into the world as my own. That's cool. Thank you, Ashley. And by the way, if anyone wants to turn on their camera, please feel free to. It would be wonderful to have more of a sense of community in our group here. Thank you, Stella, which actually her name is Lynn, and Kara and Stan, and whoever else wants to turn on their camera. But if you don't want to, I totally understand too. Okay, does anyone else have any stories from this week about whether you want to call it like reasoning to a greater context or becoming awake to some thought being a limitation that maybe we didn't see it as a limitation before? These personal examples are so super helpful because it gives more context and clarity to what this process is actually like.
Can I make a comment about what Ashley said?
Yeah, please, definitely.
That's a great example of someone learning to think for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this is all about. Rather than allowing other people to tell us what to think, learning to think for ourselves is learning how to think for ourselves and evaluate everything, all the information that's presented to us in life. And of course, all of us know that the opposite of that is buying into prepackaged belief systems, and that's not intellectual growth. A big
Totally.
part of intellectual growth is learning to discern the truth in any information that we're presented with.
And it's so fascinating when these kind of realizations come from people that you truly love, like your own father, for instance. It's very easy to think, oh, these people are generalized, these people, taught me bad things, and now I'm trying to reason out for myself. But it makes it extra difficult when it's someone you really love and appreciate to see the thoughts more clearly as whether you want to use them or not, whether they're actually yours or not, whether they're still reasonable to believe or not. And it doesn't mean we won't necessarily use them. A lot of them still may very well be absolutely great and fine. But it's like through the pain of, there was some probably emotional experience that it sounded like Ashley had a little bit there. That sounded like you had, Ashley. And it's like through the recognition of that, the question was like, what is this waking me up from that is a limited surface level thought that perhaps is no longer reasonable to believe? All right, guys. So that was, if there's no other comments or thoughts about that awareness exercise, Ashley kind of brought in the component, the journaling component, the journaling entry that we all did. And so I asked some people beforehand if they had anything they'd like to share from their journal, and I think there was 2 or 3 people. But I don't know if I got a chance to ask everyone. So if anyone wants to share from their actual journal, or even if they don't have their journal with them and just wants to share what their journaling answer was to, quote, what is the greater context alive in my life that I have been actively looking for this week? So it sounded like Ashley was looking to just be awakened to herself as she is, and so she had people giving her the, quote, greater context in the form of what she said, criticisms or different suggestions or awarenesses. But as for anyone else, it could be anything. So the question is, what is the greater context alive in my life that I have been actively looking for this week? And whenever we talked about it in class, the example that was given was my own experience, which was through my own painful, interacting with, moving around in life and then having painful and confusing experiences, I started to see that I started to discern that those experiences, what must all these experiences mean? What must all these painful and confusing experiences I was having be telling me? And I started to discern that that there were surface level beliefs that I adopted from childhood that was behind them, fueling them. Whether that might be believing that one person is the cause of something, and so them controlling, or even me being the cause of something, and so me controlling, or a surface level right and wrong thinking is another surface level thing. And so I started to see through all my experiences that all these things that seemed terrible, these circumstances and situations, were actually, what if I could see them in a different light? What if they were actually the divine orchestrating these circumstances in order to bring out in me these emotions, so I can discern what those most surface level thoughts were and then be free of them? So I started to walk around seeing that the divine was orchestrating these circumstances in my life in order for this pain and confusion to come up and be able to be free of them. So that was the, and I was actively looking for that in my life. So that was the greater context that I was walking around actively looking for in my life. So I'm just wondering, in your guys' experience, what was the greater context alive in your life that you had been actively looking for this week? And if anyone wants to share their journal about that or just speak to it, then that would be awesome. KT, I know that we talked a little bit. Did you have, I'm trying to remember what you said. Did you have something that you could share? Hi.
So if you're gonna call me out.
Yeah, I'm calling you right out.
Yeah, my issue was that I wasn't sure how to condense all of my thoughts into something simple to communicate, but I'll try my best.
Right, cool.
So an example of a greater context I had this week was concerning failure. So it's something that I've been having a fear of lately when it comes to putting myself out in the world. So the greater context I guess I gained was that failure is just an illusion, because if something is still gained from the experience or the choices that you made, you're not really failing.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly for me is the fear of failure, and recognizing that the fear of failure is just false evidence appearing real. So again, adding to that being an illusion. And that was kind of liberating for me to just accept that it's going to be trial and error and seemingly success and failures, but even if something doesn't have the outcome that I want it to have, I'm still gaining something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so were you actively looking for what you were gaining?
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't quite got to what I can take away from the recent feelings I've been having on a failure, but I was looking into human design this week, and that's kind of what sparked it. Super interesting stuff.
Did it bring up failure? Did human design bring up failure for you?
Well, it was this aspect of my human design chart where it said my entire life will be a roller coaster of trial and error to be able to figure out what works and what doesn't. And so that just my automatic thoughts, my like ego thoughts, the fear that came up, which I was observing, was that I was like, oh, that just sounds exhausting, or that sounds like not ideal, or poor me in a way. And then I was observing those thoughts, and I thought, okay, how can I like broaden this though? Like, how can I expand this thinking? And so I was just, oh, I guess it blossomed from that.
That's a perfect example. How can I expand my thinking? That's totally the question to ask. If we're interpreting it at, you gave a perfect example of failure or success, then that's one of those examples of the most surface level way of interpreting something. So you totally nailed that. It's like through the, as you said, getting stuff out in the world. I think you're probably doing your artwork, getting your artwork out in the world. There is you probably notice some emotion or some pain, quote, or confusion from it in some kind of way. And so that's absolutely one of those examples of knowing that there is a most surface level belief that is coming up and fueling that emotion in those experiences. So then it's like, what is it? And you discerned what that most surface level interpretation was, and you called it failure. And so, yeah, that's absolutely a perfect example of finding, what were we calling it, the the most surface level interpretation of our experiences. And then, like you said, it's like, how can I expand out and include more in my thinking? You nailed this so well. Include more in my thinking to move past this failure idea. And you totally did that too. It's like the next part is you realized that it isn't that if you take anything away, like, okay, so what I'll do different next time, then it's not a failure. And that through doing that again and again, repeated times, then eventually you'll figure out what way it works best to get your stuff out into the world. And so then you're at the challenging part now to where the tendency you have, and this is the tendency for probably everyone in some way, is when they start to move their stuff out in the world and it doesn't go in the exact way maybe you had in mind, that it's interpreted as failure. And then when you do put it out in the world and then it does go the way you want to, it's interpreted as success, which both of those experiences are not the whole case. Both of those experiences are the most limited way to interpret what that experience was. And the mind wants to celebrate whenever things went exactly the way it wanted, or be hard on ourselves and condemn ourselves when it didn't go the way we wanted. But both of them is that, as we talked about in the last class, like that those most surface level beliefs that was passed down to us whenever we were a kid. So, KT, I think that in journaling, and maybe you even did this too, which is how you came to what you described there. But journaling, journaling out. I'm seeing a couple different things and options in my mind that could be beneficial. Could be journaling, or maybe even like visualizing it and seeing that. I think this would be helpful. This is what I would do anyways. It's like visualizing, seeing this, you could say, steps that it will take to produce in the likelihood to produce in the way you want to, and that's including all of the mistakes as absolutely part of the path. I think that's what it is. What do you think about that? It's like and I think that you're doing that too. But it's like seeing all the steps that it will take as absolutely part of that is what it is. It's like absolutely every single step, including the steps that feel like failures, is absolutely part of the path. So then it's like trying to see and discern just how important those failures actually are. Yeah, that's essentially what you're saying too. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. I love that. Does anyone else have anything to say about that? I'm sure we've all experienced failure or success a million times before. Any ways that you guys have found is helpful to move through that?
I can totally relate. Failure, especially, I'm a goal setter. I love numbers and having very set goals and actions behind the, like, plans to make those actions. But I don't know if can anybody give me advice or wisdom on when you let someone else down? Like, even if it's just like not even like they're sad about it, like my boss the other day, he thought I did something wrong, and he told me that this was slightly concerning. Those two words I have repeated for weeks.
Oh no.
And ended up it was a malfunction in the computer where it was making a name blank. It had nothing to do with me. And it had been happening since August. But anyway, it's just that failure of letting someone else down is what weighs me, and I don't know how to learn from that.
You know, this lesson that we're about to start here in a few moments, I think might actually include that in the lesson. I think it might include yeah, it will actually. This is going to be good. So it will include it will take off the individual causal point of you, Ashley, being the one who let the boss down. And we'll start to see how there's no way, how that is just, once again, just as you said, the most surface level interpretation of what had happened, when in reality it is more like, like KT said, expanding out to include more, to where we are seeing that due to, oh my goodness, it's so crazy. I see it in my mind. It's like, how do you describe this? It's like due to exactly the way all circumstances and events have played out, it just unfolds in the exact way that it did, and everything kind of moves and bounces off of everything else, kind of like what is that game where you pull back the little thing and let go and it shoots the ball all around? What is that called? What is that called? You guys know what I'm talking about.
Pinball.
Yeah, pinball. Thank you.
Pinball.
It's kind of like this hits that, and due to the exact and precise angle, it shoots off at this very specific degree of trajectory, and then it hits something else due to what it hits, due to exactly what it is that it hits, and the ball itself due to exactly what it is, and due to gravity and all these other things that influence it, it moves exactly in these ways. So you can start to see that life actually moves exactly like that. And then when you see how all that stuff moves in that way, then you realize that it was never Ashley that did anything, even if it was her actual actions that did it, but due to exactly what Ashley is, and she made the exact choices that she made due to exactly what the environment is, and all that the environment is. And so everything's constantly working together due to the exactness of everything that's there to influence the whole movement that is the moment. And so Ashley realized it wasn't even actually anything that she had done. She said it was a computer glitch or something like that. But still, you experience the pain of someone saying, "You let me down." And so I think that, and that is the most limited surface level example. You could call it failure or let down or gain loss or any number of those types of things. Right, wrong, which is what we're going to go to in this lesson in a moment. But in reality, so he is clearly, your boss is clearly still using that type of thinking. And there's a way in which that type of thinking is alive in you in other areas of your life too. That's why you are susceptible to it in that moment. You could use these words, but realistically, we're all susceptible to that to varying degrees. And so I think that when we start to include more, like KT was saying earlier, seeing how none of the circumstances could have been any different than it was. It literally played out exactly like it did due to exactly all the components and constituents or people and exactly who those people are that were present in that situation. So, therefore, it's just an overlay or an interpretation, this idea of "you let me down." And so I think this lesson coming up that we're going to move into will hopefully bring that to light on paper and with more clarity, so we can move past those type of most surface level ways of interpreting things. Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah. Any other thoughts about that before we move on?
I got a thought for you.
Yeah, let's hear it, Corbin.
That makes sense.
Good. Tell me.
This may be a surface level idea I
Okay,
have
cool.
here myself.
I can feel it.
What I like, the challenge I have with that in my own life is, like, I appreciate looking at things like that. It's very freeing
Right.
to view things from that way, because you're like, oh, it's not all my fault.
Right.
But sometimes, like, you did things that caused something to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like you know me, I'm a sales guy, right? So if I make this many phone calls, I get this many deals, right? If I put in this effort, then it's a machine and it produces this result.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I go to the gym 3 times a week and I work out regularly, I'm going to get this result. So we are in control to an extent of the results that we get in our life. And so whenever we get a result, it's hard to not look at it and go, I contributed to this result and I'm responsible for this result. And so pairing up the difference between the two of, like, okay, I did cause this in my life, because to an extent, we do cause the things.
Sure.
So where does it separate? Because I love that idea, but I have trouble merging them.
Cool. That's the best question on the planet. Totally. So one of the things you said was, you did something that caused something to happen. And so that's the first thing you said, and that really was the core of all the examples that you gave, where you do something and thus cause it to happen. But the thing about that idea right there is, it is a saying that we're only going to consider this point right here to this point right here. It's saying, I made these phone calls, so X, Y, and Z happened. So you're saying causal point is here, and the end of and the action and the effect is here. It's saying that I'm only going to look at this area right here. Or like with working out, it's like saying, okay, I worked out, and so the effect was my muscles got bigger, or I lost weight, or I became more healthy, or any number of other examples. Whenever you say you did something that caused something to happen, it is saying I'm only going to look at from point A to point B as any factors to include at all. Okay. So when in reality, and this is where it gets fun, is in reality, it's like, okay, let's experiment to see how expanded we can get, and then notice the freedom that we might get from that expansion. And so with these examples that you gave, Corbin, it's like, okay, yeah, so I worked out, and so caused, we'll say muscles, I caused my muscles to get bigger. Well, in reality, there were a lot more components involved in that than you. There was if you went to a gym, there was everything that took for the gym to be open and there in order for that to work. Or even if you worked at home, it's like the manufacturer, all the stuff that had to be in place for the manufacture of the weights and then you had to have had a job in order to have money in order to buy the weights. And you also had to have motivation in order to look a certain way. Okay, so where did that motivation come from? Okay, maybe that motivation came from someone who you idolize, or someone who maybe it was a parent a long time ago who stressed the importance of fitness and health. And so it's like to actually say, I'm only going to look between point A and point B is just the most surface level way of interpreting something. And so it might be like, okay, well, why the heck would I expand that far out to include all that kind of stuff? Well, whenever you experience the freedom of someone else being like, you disappointed me or failed me, kind of like Ashley was saying, you experience the freedom realizing that, oh, actually, no, there was a lot other more contributing factors you're seeing in your own mind than me. But okay, if you believe those things and want to experience that pain that comes along with that, then that's fine. I mean, these are all thoughts you have while someone points at you and says that, but in reality, it's like how do you want to experience? If you're done experiencing the pain and shame of someone saying you failed me and this is concerning, then you can keep experiencing that and keep those thoughts of I am the cause of things. Or we can experiment with seeing how actually we are not the cause of anything. We are only we are only a cog in the machine that's rolling, or we are just a part of this huge organism called life and not the cause of any of it. We influence it and move with it and in it. Isn't that fascinating? Did that kind of answer your question, Corbin? Do you think did that kind of help with that thought?
I appreciated it.
Cool.
I still saying that we're a cog in the machine, right? I have freedom of choice. Mm-hmm. So I can make two separate decisions.
But are you the cause, though? Once again, the blinders are already back on, saying I. But actually, what else was part of it that even influenced you or inspired you to do or say this thing that you might do or say in a moment?
But like you created this class, right?
Sure.
So because you've created this class, you are kind of directing your life in a way, right?
You could say that. But the way I would say it is due to the pain and struggles and inspirations and things that I've experienced earlier in my life has, like the pains, for instance, has caused me to be like, okay, well, I don't want to be in this kind of stuff forever, so it's caused me to seek freedom. And then, so due to like this painful childhood experience, for instance, that I had, that has, and then me even seeing like other inspirational people and learning inspirational ideas was part of what came together, an amalgamation of who I am now that moves things forward. But to say that I am absolute cause would be to just saying only this point to this point am I going to look. And so, so I don't see it like that. I see it like, oh my goodness, it's almost like the whole like totality of existence has influenced me due to exactly the way everything has ever played out to be this particular energy and movement that I have. Because realistically, man, I can't do another job. I've tried. That sucks for me. Can't do it. And so this is the only thing my system does. And so you could call it a choice, but in reality, it's like due to everything that this ball of energy called Brian has been through, this is the way he moves in the world now. He's not cause, but he is definitely a momentum of energy. Depends the way you want to look at it. And you would only want to look at it another way if you've had your fill with the pain that comes from thinking we are absolute cause and in our successes and therefore in our failures. It doesn't change the way we move in the world. It just changes the way we experience the world. Okay, that's good stuff. We got about 35 minutes left, so you know what? Let's go ahead and move into the new lesson for this week, because I think we touched on last week's exercises and journaling prompt and lesson really well. And also within that, we also touched on this week's lesson a little bit too. So let's go ahead and go into that and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Okay, this one's called Lesson 2. Lesson 2, Freedom from the Right, Wrong, Self-Talk Story. So we all got some kind of right, wrong, self-talk story. It's like a story in our head, so self-talk that is very much based in right or wrong, whether we did something right or wrong, whether someone else did something right or wrong, or whether a circumstance or situation was right or wrong. So can everyone see what's being presented? Someone could let me know that it's going through correctly. That would be helpful.
I've got it.
Awesome.
I've got it.
And it enlarges on my cell phone.
Wonderful.
Just by finger movement.
Cool. Okay, guys. Is everyone seeing it? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Okay, great, cool. Okay, awakening. Freedom from the right, wrong, self-talk story. In our last lesson, we reasoned to the greater context of divine orchestration as a way to understand our life experiences, as an evolution from our exaggerated idea of personal control, much like we just talked about. In this lesson, we will reason more deeply in order to integrate and apply this as a living reality into our own lives by investigating it in the light of cause and right, wrong. So we kind of went into the cause thing a little bit. And we'll go into that and right, wrong. Let's start by, again, calling into our minds the circumstances within our own lives that are painful or confusing. And so if you guys have a pencil and piece of paper handy, then it might aid this process in becoming more clear by writing that down, by where it says journal this, what that really means is just write it down. Write down the circumstances within your own life that is painful or confusing. So something that you're wanting to understand, whether it's an interaction with someone, whether it's something you did or something you didn't do, or whatever it might be that might be, quote, following you throughout the day in the form of self-talk. So if you don't have a piece of paper or a pencil, then you can just call to mind something that's been bothering you lately, or something confusing or painful or unacceptable, or however you would word it. So after you got that idea down in your mind or on paper, I'll give you guys a second to come up with that. Okay. You guys probably have something in your mind. It's usually not hard to remember something that was bothering us. Okay, so as we learned in the last lesson, everything that happens is a result of a divine orchestration with our greatest benefit in mind. So next here we say, then we can ask ourselves, what is this divinely orchestrated circumstance bringing up within my emotional system as an opportunity to awaken from? Kind of like KT's was failure success. What am I feeling? Perhaps shame. So, man, almost every circumstance that's bothering us really can be rooted back to the shame-pride polarity. So pride is right, shame is wrong. But we're primarily going to work with shame in this lesson. And really, no matter what the emotion that you're feeling is, there's usually many levels of emotion, and shame is very easy to be a part of that. So pretty much any situation that comes to mind, particularly if you think it has anything to do with the polarities of like right, wrong, good or bad, that kind of thing, this can be applied to. So what am I feeling? And then you could write that down. Shame, perhaps, to go along with this lesson. Okay, what kind of thought is shame related to? Let's reason through this. Shame is a hiding the self kind of energy. Shame, like, oh, I can't believe I done that, so disgraceful. Hiding the self kind of energy. Hiding the self because we were bad or wrong, aka right, wrong thinking. As we reasoned in the last lesson, when pain or confusion comes up, it's always an indication of the opportunity to awaken to a greater context. After we reason out what the opportunity to awaken from, what is the opportunity to awaken from, right, wrong, good, bad thinking, we look deeper into the honest reality of this type of thinking. So before we explore that, here it says note, and I kind of went over this already, but for sake of words, let's just stick with right, wrong. Although right, wrong is the same as other shame thought polarities, like good, bad, or anything similar. All right, let's reason with this right, wrong thinking as the opportunity to awaken from. What is this? What does this imply? Right, wrong thinking. Does right, wrong imply a single individual? And this is an important line here. Does right, wrong imply a single individual of an action, a doer that was right or wrong, meaning cause of the action? Okay, so right now we're clearly defining this idea of right, wrong. We're defining it as a doer, or a single individual of an action, a doer that was right or wrong, meaning cause. So this is the very crux of right, wrong thinking, defined there. If so, already you can look at the situation that you've written down that was troubling or painful or confusing. It's like, okay, does this within it have myself having identified, or maybe someone else having identified me as the single individual of an action, a doer that was right or wrong, meaning cause of the action. So does this thing that you wrote down have that component in it? If so, is this type of thinking excluding other factors needed to more fully understand? Is this type of thinking excluding all other factors within the totality of life needed to fully understand? Kind of like what we went over with Corbin's wonderful examples. It seems like a greater context is always helpful to include when reasoning. So, is this reality helpful? Is this really helpful or possible to single out a person as the cause of anything? Is it really helpful or possible? Is it really helpful to exclude other factors that would help give a greater context through which to understand? I think the answer is obvious. So in a very intellectual, obvious kind of way, would it be helpful to exclude other factors within our reasoning process when attempting to understand? Of course not. This is obvious. You wouldn't want to. If you're trying to figure out who caused the crime and someone's saying, well, there's a piece of the puzzle right here, you wouldn't push that piece of the puzzle away. You wouldn't say, no, I'm going to exclude that thing. It would need to be included in the evidence. And so, of course, the answer is obvious that we wouldn't want to exclude anything. Okay, now let's apply this to our own lives. Within the challenging circumstances of your life that we brought to mind earlier, can you see what might have influenced you to behave in that right-wrong way? So say someone is saying that you're bad or wrong within that challenging situation that you wrote down in your journal already. Can you see what might have influenced you to behave in that right-wrong way? Perhaps earlier in childhood, or teenage years, or 20s, or 30s, or 40s, or 50s, or however old you are. Can you see what might have influenced you? And this influence that helped to cultivate that behavior that someone is saying is right or wrong, or bad right now, can you see where at in your life that had come from? And if so, write that down in your journal. Can you see when you might have picked up that habit, whether it be from social media or TV or musicians or actors or your parents or your grandparents or friends or teachers? It's like, what point in my life was when I picked up that habit? What point in my life that I picked up that way of being in the world, of which now someone is saying is wrong or bad, or even that I'm saying someone else is wrong or bad? At what point in their life did they pick that up? So we're starting to see that they're not cause. But it's easier for us to understand that they're not cause if the situation's about someone else doing something wrong or bad, if we first see that we're not cause. If we first see something that someone else is saying that we did wrong or bad. So write that down. If your situation that you wrote down has the component of you doing something wrong or bad, then write down at what point in your life was that behavior cultivated. this one again, as you can see at which point in your life, can you see at which point in your life you might have adopted that way of behaving? And when you see that, then you can ask, can you really claim a hard yes? I adopted that way consciously. I knew the future implications in that moment of the adopted behavior. Can you say, yes, I knew I would be seen as right wrong in the eyes of myself or someone else years or decades later? Of course not. It's not possible to have known that. Therefore, it's not possible for anyone else to have known that. Therefore, it's not possible for any bad or wrong thing Therefore, it's not possible that any bad or wrong thing has anything to do with you or anyone else personally. Do you guys see that? Immediately then, the question comes up. Well, then what could we call it? We could call it humanity. Hi, someone's wanting to say something. Ashley, no, she's not. Okay. So, what could we call it then? We could call it humanity. Literally, everything that anyone has ever done affects the whole, which we are experiencing the whole constantly. It's like whatever our present moment is, we call people, but really that's the whole, that's humanity influencing, and we are influencing humanity. And it's this constant amalgamation of something growing and building. And to label any part of that amazing spinning amalgamation of growth as the causal point is to be excluding all other factors. So those are important questions to ask. Which is, can you really, I'm going to go over this part one more time, can you really claim a hard yes? I adopted that way consciously. So that way that someone is saying that you're bad or wrong, like Ashley's boss, for instance. I knew the future implications in that moment of the adopted behavior. Can you say, I knew I would be seen as right or wrong in the eyes of myself or someone else years or decades later for being what? Just you. What, motivated to work, to move my body and thoughts in a particular way? Where did all that come from? Parents, life, actors, everything that's ever influenced you in life, you are the result of in every single present moment. So clearly you're not cause, you're just one part in the whole spectrum of experience, of the sequential line of experience. So when we really get that, we see that there actually is no absolute cause. We can use the language of cause in order to talk about things, like if we're explaining how to make sales calls, like Corbin was saying, we can use language to talk like that. However, we can't believe that and not experience the pain from it. And lastly here, as we reasoned before, what orchestrates humanity's circumstances? The divine. Therefore, not only is the divine orchestration cause, which is really to say everything in existence is cause at the same time. It's all coming together and causing in each present moment. But as we reasoned before, it is for our greatest benefit to awaken. To awaken from each old way of thinking, in this case of this lesson, shame as right-wrong thinking. Any thoughts or questions immediately from that? Can you guys see how this would be liberating? Can you see how the self-talk that we get caught up in our head is totally based on cause, right, and wrong? That story that we carry with us all day long? And to see that the foundation of that story, which is causal right and wrongs, is actually the most limited way to think. And that when we expand that story to include all other factors that could be possible, then all of a sudden that story has no fuel to exist anymore. I'm going to present my screen one last time, and we're going to talk about the practices for this week. If no one has any questions about that, I'm sure everyone is seeing it and/or needs some time to have their own experience with it to know it to be true for themselves. So that's the reason why this week we have a practice a journaling prompt again that will help with that. Okay, I assume everyone can see my screen again here. This is the same as last week. Read the lesson every day if possible. In the morning, in the evening, and in different moods to allow the words to influence different perspectives you may have at different times. And then this one is the same, except for this week I added the definition of orientation because I still think that's a really great way of describing this awakening exercise. And if anyone has any questions as to what the awakening exercise was or is, refer to that video that I believe I sent everyone. If not, let me know because it explains it really well. The definition that I added this time is orientation definition. The determination of the relative position of something or someone, especially oneself. So it's just an exercise to determine the different parts of yourself, and especially the part that is most true to being you. So refer to that video for more details. And then lastly, the super awesome journaling prompt that I think you guys are going to like this time is journaling about a right-wrong self-talk story that has been stuck in your head and how that has felt. Okay, that's the first part. Then journal about how you see it differently in light of this new information and the difference in how that feels. I think that journaling prompt will make this whole idea ultra clear in your mind if it wasn't clear already. Within your own thoughts and your own experience in your own life, your own world. All right, you guys, any thoughts or questions about any of that?
I got some for you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I see the tremendous benefit of looking at the past that way. But if you have desires and things like that in life, right, of how you want to be as a person or who you want to be or anything like that, then it kind of confuses me on like, I'm just going to be who I am tomorrow, you know? Like, how do you, does that make sense on why that's confusing to me?
I think so. I think I got it. Let me reiterate it back and let me know what you think. I think that you're seeing that, okay, I can see how the past has created the me today due to all the influences and everything that has happened, all the momentum of that. I am that as a present moment expression. But then it's like, okay, so with the future, and this is, I need you to clarify this if I'm seeing it wrong, but how do I create my future? What's more specifically the question on that part, Corbin?
Well, like, we all have desires of the way we want life to be. You don't want to keep working for other people and things like that, right? I don't want my business to fail or my relationship to fail or anything like that, right? And so it's like, moving forward, how do you take that knowing that everything's just happening as it is? Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I got it now. Cool, thank you. So it's kind of like the same way with how you see the past all moves together. Each moment is like, and it echoes out so big to infinitely big. It's like even just within one present moment of the past, who influenced all the parts of you and who influenced all the parts of the other person, and then who influenced all the parts of those people who influenced you, and echoes out so huge. And so that's what brought us into the now. But even looking at that, it's like every time you come together with yourself and another person, you're influenced by them and they influenced you. And due to the sheer coming together and then separating, now you're different forever. Just because of the sheer coming together, you're different forever. And then whenever you separate, then that little bit of difference is what changes you to inspire you to maybe stop working for someone else. It's like I've come together so many times with working for a boss that now I am very inspired to my momentum is my present moment momentum now due to working for another boss has inspired me to start a different path of working for myself. But if it wasn't for those past experiences, then there may not be that inspiration. If it wasn't for the coming together with that boss in the past, and due to the coming together, probably many times, many times, then finally enough is enough, or the fever pitch or threshold is reached to where now you are different enough to where your momentum is changing and you're making different choices, which we call goals or future direction. Like, I decided I'm going to do this. Well, actually, I decided I'm going to do this and make my future in these kinds of ways. Well, actually, that was from all kinds of past experiences of coming together, and because of the coming together of the pain or the joy and love, I'm different forever. So again and again that happens as we come together and separate. And that momentum of many experiences of pain maybe, or many experiences of inspiration or love, is what finally makes us make the decision saying, hey, I'm going to start my own business, or hey, I'm going to move my artwork finally out into the world in a newer, bigger way, whatever it might be for the individual. And so once again, you could say, I made the decision to do that. I caused that. I am creating my life. I am the cause of the decision of my life to be better. But really, it's like, what happened right before that? How many instances of pain had happened to finally make you motivated enough to do that decision now, to do that different thing that's going to cause a different future? And so you could limit it down and just say, I did that. But realistically, it's like, that crappy boss did that. Realistically, it's like other things were a part of that too. The people who inspired you to reach for bigger, greater things. So that's how our future is created. And this is just a different way to to include more factors in how life and creation actually works, instead of the most surface level interpretations of I am cause, which is painful, as we've discussed and as we've experienced for ourselves. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Kind of, in a way. I guess it may just be like, I don't understand where free will's implemented.
Totally. These are
like it sounds like your idea you have like almost gets rid of free will, like it's not a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I could decide to wake up and drink every day. I could decide to say I hate you to someone, and that could be a very harsh thing. Or some, like, there's very careful things in conducting life sometimes, you know, and those can change and orientate the rest of the world around us, and then that person can be upset and go to someone else and hurt them, you know, or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
To where I see like you have to make a conscious decision at the same time, don't you? That's where I don't understand the intertwining.
Right. Thank you for the question. What is all of the momentum that would cause a person to make that conscious decision? That's the thing to look at. Is, could you really decide to just start drinking every day for the rest of your life? Could you really just decide that? Is one's mind so haphazard that you might just decide to start doing that someday, despite everything that has happened in the past that has very much motivated you to be who you are and make something of your life? Could you just accidentally, haphazardly decide to make a random wrong choice and really start screwing stuff up? No, I think that there are a lot other parts to include that help, that really is the momentum of our energy and our personalities and the, quote, choices that we make. And so, yes, there are things like free will and free choice that we're confronted with whenever we are stepping outside of the most limited interpretations of the way we experience things, which is, for instance, I am cause because I'm only looking at this point to this point. Yes, there are these ideas of free will and free choice that we have to take a closer look at. And have to figure out where they fall for us. What that actually means. Is it a thought? Is it just a thought that humanity has come to adopt due to humanity using the most limited interpretations for things all the time? And does free will and free choice actually have the importance that we've come to place on it? So then there are a lot of parts on this topic to unravel that I could go into more now, but I might actually just confuse it more than help it. Because it really comes down to this: who am I? Which is what this whole course is about. Who am I at the deepest level? And who is the one who thinks I have free will or free choice? Am I that one who thinks I have free will, I have free choice? Am I that one? And so realistically, this is a path of discovering who we are at the deepest level. Maybe that made sense, maybe not, but that is absolutely in the design of the unfolding of the rest of this course, to understand those important questions that are clearly coming up, which I'm so excited that you're like boom, 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 boom. It's like all unrolling for you in this moment. So I think if it's not already a little more clear, I think it'll become more clear as we go along. Okay, we got like 1 minute left. Any other thoughts or questions before we close for this evening? That free will and free choice is always an interesting crossing point for people. It'll be interesting to see how we move through it later in the course. All right, you guys, so you guys will have those little 3 practices for this week. I'm going to email them to you right after we get off here, so everyone will have that lesson and the 3 practices for this week. And if anyone didn't get that from last week, because I emailed the lesson from last week, please let me know, because those are important to have. I want you guys to have those at your disposal to use. So please let me know if you did not get it. That would be very helpful for me to hear. And then I'll also send everyone the recording of this class in a couple days too. All right, so next class, just so everyone knows, is planting a seed in your minds. Next class, we're unraveling, well, in a similar way, we unraveled cause and right and wrong and control in the last 2 lessons. This next class, lesson 3, will be unraveling gain loss. And gain loss is like everywhere in our experience, which is kind of like failure or success. They're all kind of similar, but gain loss is next week. All right, you guys. I love you all a ton. If anyone has any questions or experiences or anything throughout the week, please send them to me. I would love to hear. All right. I'll see you guys later. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye. Boom.